Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. This is part 3 on the discussions on Indic method of thesis construction Tantra Yuktis. So in this part, we will discuss about the inputs from Tantra Yuktis on aspects of thesis construction, inputs on content, structure and language with a few illustrations, and we will also look into the functions of Tantra Yuktis as presented in the texts of IKS. In the previous part, you may recollect the etymological derivation, the views of scholars and the components of the Tantra Yukti document. Now we will continue with our discussion as such on how directly these Tantra Yuktis have inputs on the thesis construction as such. While part 2 was also of the nature of giving introductory details, this is a direct immersion. This part is a direct immersion into the tools of the Tantra Yuktis towards thesis construction. As we have been seeing as a theme that Tantra Yuktis contribute to content, structure and language of a thesis, analyzing based on the tools of Kautilya, of Tantra Yuktis used by Kautilya, of the 32 devices, we can see that 11 Yuktis, they contribute towards the content of a thesis. 12 Yuktis help in streamlining the structure of a thesis, and the remaining 9 Yuktis help in delivering the content of the thesis in a refined language and a good diction, acceptable research-based diction. So now we will quickly see what those 11 Yuktis are which go on to contribute to the content of a thesis. So we have 11 Yuktis from Kautilya Arthashastra. Samshayaha, Anumatam, Apadeshaha, Hetvarthaha, Upadeshaha, Ekantaha, Niyogaha, Apavargaha, Vikalpa Samuchayav and Uhyam. Generally, looking at the content of a thesis, normally we will look at the beginning, what is the research question, what is the doubt, what is that this particular thesis tries to explore. So that is very critical starting point of a thesis that is conveyed by the Yukti Samshaya. Now when I have a Samshaya or a doubt, will I immediately jump to a conclusion? As a proper researcher, I should look into the views of other scholars which already exist on the given question that has come in my mind. So Yuktis Anumata and Apadesha, which are acceptance of others' views or quoting others' views, which is pointing to literature review, should be done. So when a research question arises, I look into the views that are existing on the given view, and then based on the references that I collect and analyzing and stacking and systematizing the views of others, we understand the core area of work. The scope of the work is defined. What is the root cause or what is the core area that I have to explore or probe? So that comes about, which is aptly reminded by the Yukti Hetvartha. Now with my research approaches which are suitable for my own discipline, be it humanities or sciences or medicine or whatever field, I work on the core area that is reminded by Hetvartha, I come out with my original findings. All this goes to contributing to the solid, valid, useful, unique content. So where we see I can come out with a upadesha, which is suggestion on a particular practice or a particular phenomena. I can come out with ekanta or niyoga. I can come out with a mandatory prescription, or I can observe a phenomena without exceptions, and I can also observe certain phenomena with exceptions, apavarga, and then we can see vikalpa and samuchaya, certain phenomena which are in the way, which are in the form of which has alternative solutions. It can be done this way and also that way. That can also be my original contribution, and I can also at the end of my research say these many factors go together in bringing about this particular change. So that is samuchaya. So especially upadesha, ekanta, niyoga, apavarga, vikalpa, samuchaya, these are all the ways in which I come out with my original research output. And of course uhya, which says these are all the limits of my approach and certain things are to be contextually understood. So hence these 11 yuktis remind a researcher about the core aspects that go into making a valid and solid content. It is not claimed, it should be remembered that Tantra Yukti, though it was stated that it is one-stop shop, it's not a complete solution. It provides the directions, it gives the pointers, it gives the essential aspects that should invariably be in a content of a thesis, which is not limited to this. One can add more. So hence these are to be taken as solid pointers, as essential aspects. Now let us see some examples of utilization of these Tantra Yukti on content creation. Let us take up the first Yukti itself, Samshaya. So how has it been used in Kautilya Arthashastra? We can see that, as I said, not only enumeration, definition is also given. What is the definition of a doubt? He says, Kautilya says, Ubhayataha hetuman arthaha samshayaha ubhaya hetu darshanam. An issue or a concept with two sides, with valid causes. So that is called as a samshaya. That is the definition. What is the example? What is the illustration to samshaya that Kautilya has presented in his treatise? Kshina lubdha prakritikam apachita prakritikam va. So in Kautilya Arthashastra, he speaks about to which, against which king the army has to be rallied and king has to go to the battlefield. When there are two assailable enemies, one of the virtuous character under worst troubles and another of a vicious character under less troubles and with disloyal subjects, which of them is to be marched against first? So this is the illustration for the Samshaya Tantra Yukti. So marching has to be done against the enemy, but which enemy? Which kind of enemy one has to attack? So there a person in ruling a country should get a doubt, or a person who is theorizing about this public administration and ruling of a kingdom should have a doubt. So this is the classical example. And it is not only one samshaya, it should be understood that it is not only one samshaya or doubt or question that Kautilya presents, there are many such questions that he presents. And these questions and doubts that he presents which provoke the systematic answering. One should also remember that Kautilya Arthashastra doesn't end only with the questions. Systematic questioning or doubts are presented, and then a methodical answer to all this is presented. Just like this one samshaya, we see other such doubts also presented. When two enemies, one an assailable enemy and another a strong enemy are equally involved in troubles, which of them is to be marched against first? Which is to be marched against? An assailable enemy involved in troubles to a great degree, or a strong enemy troubled to a lesser degree, and so on and so forth. And it is not only about marching against an enemy, in various other aspects of public administration also, Kautilya uses this Tantra Yukti. The point is, when there is one Yukti, it is not that it has to be used in only one occasion. It can be many occasions, in numerous occasions, in an appropriate manner. Samshaya can be manifested and a systematic response to it can be presented. Now, another Yukti we can see is Apadesha, means that looking into the views of others. So when we look into a general perception about Indian knowledge systems, people think that these are the texts that the rishis, they sat under a tree and suddenly the knowledge manifested to them. Of course, this is true about the Vedas. After their deep meditative practice, they received the knowledge, but in most other disciplines, post-Vedic literature, which are systematic treatises, we see that a very meticulous study of others' work is also done. So we call it as literature review, survey of literature, pre-existing knowledge one has to have before going into presenting one's own solutions. This Apadesha Tantra Yukti is one such classical, systematical study of others' views before presenting one's own view. Apadesha means evam asau aha iti apadeshaha. This has been stated by him. So this is the definition of Apadesha. Again, Kautilya's example is about the council of ministers, constituting the council of ministers. Mantri parishadam dvadashamatyam kurvita iti manavaha shodasha iti barahaspatyaha vimshatihi iti aushanasaha yatha samarthyam iti kautilyaha. This is a beautiful illustration. So how much should be the number of ministers in a particular council that is to be constituted by the king? So he says the followers of Manu appoint 12 members. Followers of Brihaspati vote for 16 members. The followers of Ushanas, they say 20 members should be there in the council of ministers. And of course, finally Kautilya says, Yatha Samarthyam, as per the capability of the king, how much he can delegate the work and get it done, he can have that many number of people in his council. So which means, and when one observes that Kautilya not only refers to the pre-existing views on council of ministers, he has also organized it. So 12 in an increasing order, 12, 16, 20, and finally he presents his views. So not only literature review one has to do, one has to analyze what others have stated and stack them, identify the problem therein, and then suggest one's solution. So hence, these are all the tools that go in making a thesis, as stated earlier, very unique, or else it will be just a repetition of what has been stated earlier. Now, we will look into the yuktis that contribute towards structuring a thesis. It's very interesting to note that most of these 12 yuktis come in pairs. Adhikarana and Vidhana, subject matter and the table of contents. Uddesha, Nirdesha, listing and elaborating the topics. Purapaksha, Uttarapaksha, arranging arguments against and for the topic under discussion. Atikrantavekshana, Anagatavekshana, yuktis that help to where to elaborate appropriately, earlier or later. Atidesha and Pradesha, devices for optimum utilization of arguments. Prasanga, pointing out commonness of certain factors for the current topic with the earlier or later topic, which again avoids repetition. And then finally we see viparyaya, stating a rule for a specific purpose and reversing the same rule to achieve its inverse, in a sense that I will only say this just has to be reversed. I will not state the rule once again. So all these yuktis go towards structuring and compacting a treatise. Now let us see a couple of illustrations on these yuktis that contribute towards structuring a thesis. The very first yukti that is used by Kautilya is Adhikarana Tantra yukti, where he says Yamartham Adhikritya Uchyate Tad Adhikaranam. That about which there is elaboration is the subject matter. This essentially states that this is the title or the subtitle of the particular thesis. Everyone involved in research in academia is aware of the importance of appropriately giving the title and the subtitle of the thesis, which is a very crisp presentation of the content therein. So Kautilya says, Prithivya labhe palane cha yavantyartha shastrani purvacharyaihi kritani prayashah tani samhritya ekamidam arthashastram kritam. So Arthashastra is all about acquiring more territories and administering them appropriately. Purvacharyaihi kritani. About this Arthashastra, already so many authors, so many acharyas and teachers have done their work. But because of the multiplicity of the views, there arises an importance, there arises a need to compile, organize and present all these views and harmonize the views and present it. That is what I have done. Ekamidam arthashastram kritam, which harmonizes and appropriately presents the views of various acharyas in a single place. So this is the application of Adhikarana Tantra Yukti, where we clearly understand, oh, this is what Kautilya has done in his work of Arthashastra. And one more example for structuring is the table of contents. Normally, people brush or quickly go through the table of contents to understand the entire flow of thought of a given thesis. So though it is present in the very first place, that is what is very important to understand how logically the topics have been arranged, and that has been given no less importance in Tantra Yuktis. So Vidhanam is the Tantra Yukti for table of contents. Shastrasya Prakarananupurvi Vidhanam, the sequential arrangement of topics of a treatise mentioned in the beginning of the treatise. Kautilya Arthashastra itself, we see example. So he stacks all the topics initially. Vinayadhikaranam, Prathamadhikaranasya arambhe, Vidya Samuddeshaha, Vriddha Sanyogah, Indriya Jayaha, Amatyotpattihi, and Atmarakshitakam, about 18 topics in the first Adhikarana, and in the second Adhikarana, and so on and so forth. In other treatises also, in Kavya Mimamsa of Rajashekhara also, we see the Vidhana Tantra Yukti, the table of contents presented. Shastra Sangraha, Shastra Nirdesha, Kavya Purushotpatti, and in this way that the work's title has been, the contents of the work has been systematically presented. Now one more yukti towards structuring a thesis to reduce the bulk of the thesis and make it more compact will be Atikranta Vekshanam. So Purastad eva muktam iti Atikranta Vekshanam. So reference to a past area where it has been elaborated. So no need to repeat again. So for example, we can give an example from the Charaka Samhita. Trayodasha Vidhas Vedaha Svedadhyaye nidarshitaha matrakalavida yuktaha sacha shita jwarapaha. So you can see from the reference, this is a verse from the 6th section, 6th chapter, which says that in a previous chapter, that is in Sutrasthana, that is the 6th chapter or the 6th section is the Chikitsa Sthana. This Chikitsa Sthana verse mentions that in Sutrasthana 13 types of Sweda procedure has been mentioned. So a later exploration which says go back to chapter 1 to understand the elaboration. This will not be elaborated in the 6th chapter once again. If you want its elaboration, go to the first chapter, that is Sutrasthana. So this avoids prolixity. This avoids too much of a repetition and elaboration, and it also shows that the author is aware of what has been stated where and what has been appropriately stated where. So thus this contributes to a very tight thesis. That's what we call it as very tight structure of a thesis. Now the third and final aspect of the Tantra Yukti is the language part of it. So the Tantra Yuktis have 9 Yuktis which contribute to clarifying and explaining. A thesis should also clarify and explain. So devices are there here in Tantra Yukti for that also. And it's not that it should always be explanation, certain intelligent statements which imply, so they can also be there. So Yukti is for implications, to convey certain implications. Yukti is like Vakyashesha, Arthapatti is there. And then, so in language sometimes fall short as a science or any knowledge in a discipline progresses. So to follow up or to catch up with the invention in language can also be made. So vocabulary can be invented. So that for that also provision has been made by Swasamjna Tantra Yukti. Padartha, Yoga, Vyakhya, Nirvachana, Upamana, Nidarshana contribute to clarifying. Vakyashesha and Arthapatti Yuktis contribute to implying, and Swasamjna contributes to inventing. Just giving a couple of examples, we can see the Padartha Yukti. Padavadhikaha, Arthaha, Padarthaha. Clarification of the limits of meaning of a term is Padartha. Again, going to Kautilya Arthashastra for illustration. Moolaharaha yaha pitru paitamaham artham anyayena bhakshayati saha moolaharaha. There is this terminology Moolahara. Moola is root. Hara means one snatches, the one who snatches away. By generally looking at the term Moolahara, the one who snatches the root, that is the meaning that comes to the mind. But in that particular context, when Kautilya uses the Moolahara, the term, then its meaning, contextual meaning has to be clarified. So in this context, Moola here refers to Pitru Paitamaham Artham, the wealth that has been accumulated by the father, grandfather, etc. That is Moola. Hara means the one who consumes it in an unethical manner. Anyayena bhakshayati. So he is Moolahara. He is not a one who just snatches away any root of a plant or a tree. Here, the one who is sitting on the earlier wealth of one's own forefathers and consuming them or exhausting them in an unethical manner. So hence, the meaning of the term is clarified by Moolaharaha, by this Yukti. The very explanation here is the application of the Tantra Yukti Padartha. In the same way also, in Ayurveda, we have a beautiful example from Sushruta Samhita. Vedotpattim adhyayam vyakhyāsyāmaha ityukte sandihyate buddhihi. Now this chapter is called as Vedotpatti. Veda Utpatti, the origin of the Vedas. So in Sushruta Samhita, then there is a doubt in the mind. Katamasya Vedasya Utpattim Vyakhyāsyati. Which Veda is being explained? Yataha Rigvedadayastu Vedaha, because there are so many Vedas, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, etc. Vid Vicharane, Vid Labhe, Ityetayoscha Dhatuho Anekarthayoho Prayogat. And also the word Veda is derived from the root Vid. Sometimes it means contemplation, Vichara. Sometimes it means a Labha, attainment. So in this way, when you say Vedotpatti, it can have so many meanings, including the Rigveda, Yajurveda. It means contemplation, it means attainment. So what is the meaning of the term? What is the Padartha as such? Here, then we can see Ayurvedotpattim Vivakshuhu iti. Now this is a Ayurveda text, Sushruta Samhita. So hence we can see that the Veda here refers to Ayurveda. So that is the Ayurvedotpattimiti Vivakshuhu. That clarification is as such is the application of the Padartha Tantra Yukti. Now we quickly move to another Yukti on language, that is Swasamjna. As I mentioned earlier, when science advances, when knowledge advances in any field, language should catch up. Our methodology should have such elements which help us catch up, which augment our journey to help the language should be propelled to catch up with the invention. For that, we have provisions made in Indian knowledge system centuries ago through the Yukti Swasamjna. So, Paraihi Asammitaha Shabdaha Swasamjna Asadharanaha Paraihi Anyashastraihi, a word unknown to other texts or the meaning of which is not common to other texts. That is called as Swasamjna. So many new terminologies have been coined by Kautilya himself. As an illustration, we can see Bhumyantara, Bhumyekantara, Swabhumi Avyavahita Bhumihi. The neighboring land is Bhumyantara. Bhumyekantara means there is I am there, my land is there, there is a neighbor, I have to refer to the another person. Means the third person whose land comes after my neighbor's land. For that, what is the terminology? Bhumyekantara. All these are the coinages, original Swasamjnas of Kautilya. Even in Ayurveda, we find Jentaka, Holaka. See, in Ayurveda, newer methodologies of treatment come. But the name of the treatment has to be given. A heated underground cellular and a dung related sweating. All these procedures are invented by the scientists or the medical practitioners to kind of induce sweating, which will release a person from fever, etc. So the procedure is unearthed, but what is the terminology? So the text gives Jentaka, Holaka, all these terminologies are Swasamjnas. So thus we can see the content, structure and language. Now we can move into, as such, what has been the functions of Tantra Yuktis envisaged in the traditional texts. We can see that going by the references that Tantra Yuktis are the tools which are given in the traditional texts for explorative, dialectical and interpretative works even. This is directly based on the references that we get from the traditional texts, along with contributing to content, structure and language as illustrated earlier. We can see Yatha Ambujavanasya Arkaha Pradipo Veshmano Yatha Prabodha Prakasharthaha Tatha Tantrasya Yuktayaha. When the sun rises, the lotus blooms. When the lamp is brought into a dark room, the entire room, all the things that are therein, so far it was only darkness. When the light comes in, we know what is where. So these point to, for in the same way, just like the two examples of the sun facilitating the blooming of the lotus, the light bringing the things in the room to light. So in the same way, these yuktis also help in the blooming and unearthing of new ideas, pointing to these tools contributing to explorative studies. And then in Sushruta Samhita, some more functions of Tantra Yuktis are presented. Asadvadi prayuktanam vakyanam pratishedhanam swavakya siddhirapi cha kriyate Tantra Yuktibihi. That is, to negate the arguments of others and establish one's own theoretical, philosophical standpoints, which points to the role played by Tantra Yuktis in dialectical pursuits also, pointing to its utility in the realm of philosophy. If exploration points to its utility in the area of science, these dialectical role points to its utility in the field of philosophy. Again in Sushruta Samhita we see Vyakta noktastu yepyartha Lina yechapya nirmalaha leshokta yechakechitsyuhu teshanchapi prasadhanam. Means those ideas which are not clear and then those which are hidden. So in this way there is a lack of clarity on reading a source text. Then I will write an interpretative literature, a commentary literature, an analytical literature. So which is called as higher criticism. So hence, so an interpretative analytical work is also ably supported by these tools of Tantra Yuktis, which is the realm of the linguistic area. So hence we can see, as per the traditional references, these Tantra Yuktis contribute to explorative studies, dialectical studies, and also interpretative and analytical studies, which fall under the realm of the area of linguistics, philosophy and science. So in this way we can see the fundamentals, the important essential tools with regard to content, structure and language are offered to these diverse fields which emerges by analyzing the functions of Tantra Yukti. Thus, and it is also interesting to note, as indicated earlier also, that these Tantra Yuktis, all these elements of Tantra Yuktis need not be used in one go. Whatever is the nature, texture and content, the quantum of output that you have, based on that the number of yuktis can be customized. That is mentioned by Acharya Charaka himself. All these yuktis occur in a scientific work in brief and detail. Only some of them occur in a work written in brief. It's not that as if every item in the list of Tantra Yukti should be applied in case of every work, nor in the same sequence. It only means that these are the methods of presentation of ideas in a work and shall have to be made use of appropriately as required in the context. So thus one can customize one's own yuktis, and which indeed indicates the very plastic and elastic and systematic nature of Tantra Yuktis. So thus in this part, third part, we have seen the Tantra Yuktis, how they contribute to content, structure and language, with a very few illustration from IKS literature, and we also saw the functions of Tantra Yuktis envisaged in the traditional literature, and we also finally saw how these can be customized based on the nature and the fabric of the area of one's own chosen aspect of research. Namaste.